I'd like to thank Representative Jacyn Gallagher for joining me today. Um, Representative, how are things and what's going on?
Well, we're busy campaigning, doing meet and greets and different events. I went to the NRA event, Friends of NRA event on what day was that? Saturday, I think. Yeah, Saturday night. Up in Cambridge, up in the north end of my district, and always good to support the NRA because they support good educational programs for kids and all sorts of good things for getting youth involved with guns and knowing how to shoot and use guns properly and um, training and that sort of stuff.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me today. Um, I guess just to start off, what's your background? How did you get to this point where you're in the legislature? What made you choose to run? What's your experience in the world before that? And what do you bring to the table?
So my political career started in around 2008 and Obama era. And I started volunteering for campaigns at that point, door knocking and phone calling and all of that good stuff. Um, Unfortunately, we know what the results were of that. But it really gave me insight into what it looks like to do this and what it takes and on the ground, um, what you've got to do. So that was kind of my dive in. And then I became part of my county GOP. This was in Oregon. So I was born and raised in Oregon. I um, I'm adopted. So I was born in Portland and then I got adopted by a just a nice traditional family out of Forest Grove, Oregon, and was raised on a small farm. My dad worked very, very hard and taught me a really good work ethic because he drove every day, like, I don't know, probably half an hour, 45 minutes to get to work. And then, I mean, he would get up in the morning and feed the cows and then go to work and then come home and feed the cows and take care of the fields and the hay and all that stuff. Anyway, I learned a really good work ethic from from that experience, my growing up. And but back to GOP and politics, I got involved in my previous local in Oregon, like I said, um, county GOP. We had a really good leadership team for our county central committee, and I was a part of that. I became the secretary, and I think we had a county of over 300,000 people. I became the secretary, and we just had a really, really strong leadership team that was absolutely amazing. Those people will be my forever friends. Um, and actually, probably out of that leadership team, there's probably five or six of us that have all um, left Oregon and have moved to Idaho.
Well,
Um, and several, yeah, I've got a friend in Lewiston. I've got a friend in uh, Priest River and St. Mary's, um, in Star, just a whole bunch of people, a mass exodus of Oregonians that came here. And but anyway, so I worked campaigns, volunteered for campaigns in Oregon, several different campaigns. And actually, I volunteered for in 2016, I volunteered with the Ted Cruz campaign because I was a Cruz girl. Um, and he unfortunately didn't win the primary. And so Trump did. And that was fine. And then I jumped on board for Trump and backed him. Um, and because of course that was our candidate. That's what you do. And I think Trump did a really good job. I was impressed with all the things he did. Do I um, think he's perfect? No candidate is perfect. None. I'm not perfect. I will never be perfect. I'm never going to make everybody happy. There will always be people that will disagree with something that I do or say or how I vote. That's just part of that's just part of politics, and that's part of all of this. Um, so anyway, then I was planning to retire in 2020, the beginning of 2020. I was planning on retiring. I was working for the state of Oregon for the Department of, oh, what was it? The Employment Department. And I had worked several years prior to that with the Division of Child Support in Oregon. And I was always someone who kept my dues. I did not become part of the public sector union. In fact, I was part of a lawsuit against the public sector unions. Unfortunately, we didn't win. And it had to do with taking money like straight out of your paycheck to go to the
Mhm.
unions. So we fought against that, but they got big money. So uh let's see. So I was going to retire and then COVID happened and I was told at my state job that I could work from home. But the job that I had at that time didn't really, working from home just wasn't really, I was kind of in charge of helping with managing the fleet cars for the state. And that included driving them and, fueling them up and different things. It just wasn't something that I felt I could do from home. So I just decided, okay, I'm just going to retire early. Well, we had been looking for probably about a year um, from, I think, starting in about 2018, looking to move to a conservative state. Initially, we were looking at Texas, and then my daughter decided she didn't want to move to Texas, and I didn't want to be away from her in case someday that I am gifted with grandchildren. I don't want to be that far away. So we chose Idaho because it was only 7 hours away from her. And we searched for probably a year and finally found something. I think we purchased in about September of 19. And then the whole COVID thing hit at my work. And so we started moving. I left early 2020 and then we started moving our stuff over and um, we're here officially then. But Bob had been, once we bought the place, Bob had started moving stuff over. So anyway, so I got here and thinking it was going to be a super red conservative state. And I think really the people here are um, conservative. And what I mean in that, because it seems like there has been a hijacking of that term, conservatism. And to me, it's maintaining what our founding fathers wanted for this country. Our founding documents were written for a moral people, which that's kind of, well, we all know where that's going. When you have girls that can be boys and boys can be girls, we have seen a moral decline. Um, However, I think there are a lot of conservatives like myself who want limited government, who want less government intrusion in their lives, less regulations on what they can do with their property and honestly their individual person, what they can do and what they have to do with their body. Um, and then just freedom and liberty and saving money in your pocket and your wallet. It's super concerning when our state budget has grown. I believe it's 54% in 4 years. Our state budget has grown, not to mention the federal budget, um, 34 trillion dollars in debt, growing by a trillion every approximate 100 days. So uh, I vote no on a lot of budgets because they either contain federal money or they have growth beyond what I think is reasonable. Um, I don't know anyone that, well, there is one exception. I'm not even going to go there. But most people don't get raises above maybe 3%. in a year. So really, to me, that's kind of a red flag if I see a budget that has grown or is growing over that 3%. And there are some that may not have hit that 3%, but they include things that are just not necessary. And so, uh, yeah, I vote no on a lot of budgets. And the federal budgets that include federal dollars, especially because how are we ever going to be able to pay that back? And our children and grandchildren are being enslaved by the federal government, and um, the federal government then places restrictions and rules, and especially in our school system, they take federal dollars and then expect, I don't know, cross-gender bathrooms or certain requirements in order to take those federal dollars. Well, I don't know that everybody pays close enough attention to those things. And but what gets published against conservatives is that we if we vote no on a budget, then it means that we hate whatever budget it was we voted against.
Hmm.
Um, and that appears to be the message that is going around pretty consistently against every conservative that's running that has a challenger. um, is that we hate the police or we hate the veterans or whatever. And when you vote no against a budget, well, first of all, we had a budget split this year, so we had a maintenance portion of budgets, and then we had um, the extras or the additional or the wants
Hmm.
parts of the budget. So they were split in two. And I voted for every single maintenance budget. So every agency could keep their doors open, keep their lights on. I voted for every single maintenance budget, everyone. And then when it came to the extras, yes, there were quite a few probably that I voted no on. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Um, and again, it was typically because it was either federal funds or too big of an increase, or right now with this inflationary period, I just don't think it's fair to go to the taxpayers and ask for more money. Everybody is, not everyone, but I feel like the people that I represent, a lot of the people I represent, um, your average worker, your grocery clerk, or just everyday people. Um, are going through tough times. Carton of eggs, the price of just your basic items have gone up so much under this inflationary period under, I will say, Joe Biden's administration, um, that it's hard for me to put my hand out and say, here, we need some more.
Hmm.
We need some more for this program. And this program, it sounds really good. And I tell you, there's some where it kind of breaks your heart to have to say no. Um, but somebody has to say no at some point, or we just keep going down this road where the debt gets bigger, the government grows. We get new government programs that sound really good. Well, in my experience, new government programs, typically don't go away and don't get cut. Typically, a new government program just continues to grow.
Hmm.
This year, it may start with 2 employees. Oh, that's not bad. It's only 2 employees, and we're taking money from this budget and we're going to move it over to this new program, this new government program. And it's only maybe a couple of people. And we can fund that this year with this money that we took from this other place, this other bucket. But then what happens next year? So next year, typically, from my experience, is that that budget is going to grow. They're going to need this, or that, or they're going to need more employees. So it just continues to grow. You say yes for this new budget, and then how much longer, how many more years is it going to continue on and just get bigger and bigger and bigger? Because that's typically what happens. I'm not saying every single budget. I'm not saying every single program, but it would nice to see nice. It would be nice to see some programs getting cut and some reduced budgets. And I believe that this year was better. There was more transparency, but I think going forward with this new budgeting process and system, I think it will get even more transparent, and that the JFAC or Appropriations Committee will be able to dig deeper on some of these and really expose the budgets and where our taxpayer dollars are going. I just did a simple, so I'm on health and welfare, and we kind of went in and did a simple look at some budgets. And there was one, I can't remember if it might have been like a youth home or something, and they wanted to buy a new like dough mixer or mixer kind of thing. And the money that they had set aside for that mixer. So then I went on and looked online at mixers. I mean, this is one little thing. And I found them for so much less. Um, do we always, and does government always have to have the best of the best of the best product to use, or the best of the best equipment to use? It's probably really easy to be a budget manager who is spending other people's money that doesn't come out of their own personal wallet. It's probably really easy to go buy the big, shiny, pretty object that it's not going to come out of your wallet. So, what difference does it make? So, that was just one little thing. And there was another, I think there was a lawnmower too that they were looking at purchasing, and the cost. I was like, why? Why do you need to spend this much money on a lawnmower? So that's just, I mean, that's one example of one small budget that I took a little bit of a deep dive on and found where I'm sorry, but that's just too much. You don't need to spend that much money on those things. Um, I guess maybe we need a good, a procurement officer that looks at um, Facebook Marketplace. I don't know. I
Would
don't
that
have
would
all
that
the
be a
answers, but
would that be a new government program?
how about we retrain the current procurement officers in how to use those things, where they can go to state surpluses and different areas to find maybe some used equipment that would be just as good as new. I don't know.
It's true. I've worked in the private sector back in my past life when I did computers. I've worked in the private sector, public schools, nonprofit, and state government. And state government was by far the most profligate when it came to spending. They, you could refresh your equipment basically every year, every 2 years. If there's some new toy on the market, oh yeah, we'll get it. We'll put it in the budget. It's like they felt they just had unlimited money to play with. Whereas in the other cases, the amount of money was finite, and you had to pick and choose. You had to make decisions and priorities and opportunity costs. And yeah, I think it's easy for government to forget that there's a such thing as scarcity, and they should be good stewards of the taxpayers' money.
Exactly. Yeah, I worked when I worked for the state. I mean, it was people hear about this, but I was actually there and actually really did hear it, that you get this money budgeted for your fiscal year, and by golly, you better spend
Hmm.
it before the end of the fiscal year. We need to figure out a way to spend this money, get everybody new chairs or whatever, because we don't want to have to cut back our budget for next year. So they would come up with, that's when all the new chairs were bought and the new office equipment was at the end of the fiscal year. Wow, imagine that. And then so that next year they would get the same amount or more in their budget. So
Hmm.
it was a real thing.
It's backwards incentives. So
Mm.
I was looking at your electoral history. You challenged 2 years ago a longtime incumbent who'd been there for quite a while, and you managed to win. So I guess I have two questions that stem from that. First of all, how did your message resonate, so that the voters of your district decided to go with, someone relatively unknown rather than someone they knew for a long time? And now, 2 years later, having been in office, how is it different having to, you have a record to run on, which both, you can promote, say, here's the good things I did, but then your opponent can, like you said, come in and say, well, you voted against this budget or you voted against that. So, yeah, what do you think?
I think that I think that somebody had run against the incumbent when I ran. Every year he was in office, and so he'd had a challenger every
Hmm.
time. And so I think people were ready for somebody new, and I just sold my message of really who I am. That's how I ran. I ran on who I am and what my core principles and values are. And my core principles and values were to save the taxpayer money, to grow government less, to spend less, and to maintain the people's freedoms and liberty and less regulation in their lives. Um, I think my incumbent that I beat last time, he was a former public school superintendent. And I think there seems to kind of be I don't know, I'm not going to put everybody in a box, but there kind of seems to be a a pattern or uh, I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot of public sector education people that are more less conservative in their thought, I guess, and the way that they vote. I think there seems to be that kind of seems to be a pattern or what I have seen that it's public school and public school only, and public school always needs more money.
Hmm.
And no matter what the scores are doing with the kids, we just need to, more money needs to go to public schools. And I think that the people in this district um, were done with that narrative, wanted somebody who was more conservative that might uh, see things through a different lens. Um, and so we hit it hard. We just went out and talked to people and got my message out there the best that we could, being that I had only lived here 2 years. So some of the feedback that I got from people where my the incumbent that I was challenging, when he was out talking with the people, he would tell them, she's only lived here 2 years and I'm a whatever generation
Hmm.
Idahoan. Um, and I think that I don't, well, it obviously didn't connect with everyone very well. And it almost, um, I'm from Oregon. And when I got here and I started to get involved and going to the Capitol, the people that were really hardcore, um, putting an effort in to try to keep Idaho red were a lot of Californians, Oregonians, and people from Washington, because I think we have lived through some of these changes or have seen the spiral downward that government growth and um, pretty much like through COVID, all the
Hmm.
tyranny and the government mandates and those kinds of things just I think that resonated with people that um, where was I going? Those people from out of state that came from really liberal states know what it's like to live under really high regulations and government control. Uh, and yeah, I just think that spoke to people. So at this point, now where the shoe is on the other foot and I'm the incumbent and I have somebody running against me, and I do have a voting record that is, I got in and I did exactly what I said I was going to do. That's what I did. And so I have a voting record that is very conservative. I'm one of the more conservative legislators in the House. Um, and of course, that's being used against me. That's the narrative that is going against all of us conservatives, that we we hate the police or we hate whatever because because we wanted the budget to go back to JFAC and maybe take out some of the pork
Hmm.
or lower some of the budgets and the spending. So that just makes us hateful. Well, you know what? First of all, I'm married to a Navy veteran, 22-year Navy veteran. So no, I don't hate veterans. In fact, my husband loves me very much and supports my votes. So, to say that is it's just campaigning. I mean,
Mm.
really, it's just campaigning. Um, and I expect that. I expect that to be said. And um, we also have the huge, obvious battle within the Republican Party in Idaho between the establishment folks and the conservative folks. And there's a huge split, and the establishment has way more money, um, way more money than the conservatives do. So it does really pose a challenge, and we've got to get people out that support good conservatives, good strong conservatives, or we're going to lose these seats. And then you've got, I kind of looked at it uh, as an analogy. You have every day we get in our mailboxes, we get voting guides or voting recommendations from different lobby groups, and and then um, and then on the other side of that, you have conservative think tanks that you can use as a resource to maybe help you make some decisions if it's difficult. Sometimes it is. Budgets sometimes can be difficult, uh, and different bills sometimes. But anyway, so say you have two AI robots. You have two AI robots, and say that they were up for election. These two AI robots, and you have to choose between one of them. So you've got the AI robot that is going to go in and vote with all of those lobby groups, all of those voter guides, IACI, the food producers, the Association of Idaho Cities, Association of Idaho Counties. So you've got AI robot number one that's going to vote however IACI wants them to vote, and the food producers and all the lobby groups. So there's choice A, or you have choice B, where it's a freedom and liberty and less government growth, less government spending robot. So you can choose the big business robot, or you can choose the freedom and liberty robot to who you want sitting in that spot in the legislature. And I think, freedom and liberty people are going to choose the freedom and liberty robot over the IACI robot. Um, my challenger is endorsed by IACI,
Hmm.
and I have a really low, probably one of the lowest IACI scores. I personally do because I vote very conservatively, and we get told that we're just voting for a score, or we're just voting however uh, Papa Hoff, who isn't even you know Wayne Hoffman isn't even part of IFF anymore, but we still get accused of voting however Papa Hoff tells us to vote. I am an independent thinker, and just because my conservative principles and values happen to align with maybe one group or another, they also align with the GOP platform. I also get rated highly with that. Um, so it's not just nobody tells me how to vote, and I'm not sure why it's okay for people with a really high IACI score to vote the way that they want them to. I'm really not understanding the logic there, why they don't get the fingers pointed at them or accused of voting a certain way that they're being told when they're going along with these voter recommendations from all these lobby groups. Versus you have other organizations, the GOP platform, CPAC, legislative analysis. You have these other groups that aren't in it they're not standing to make any profit. They're standing up for we the people, and their voter recommendations or their voter, scoring bills or rating bills. Those are for freedom, spending, education, and of course my values are going to align with that. My values are not going to align with big business. I think this election is going to be a decision between who you want running this state. Do you want big business running this state, or do you want we the people running the state? And that's the choice. That is the choice this election. And I am a we the people representative, and that's what I will be. And I have no shame in how I have voted. Um, I'm proud of my voting record. I voted as a conservative. And when I was watching the legislature before I got in, it was people like the people that I admired were the Priscilla Giddings and the Christy Zitto and the Tammy Nichols and the Heather Scott and um, Ron Nate. And those were the people that I really admired for their guts to stand up for conservative principles and values. And, those are the people that I emulated and wanted to be like when I got in there. And so I got in there and I feel like I did what they would have done had they been reelected. And now it's like now I have a voting record and I'm too conservative or whatever the terms are, but I have no shame. I have no guilt for the way that I have voted, and I stand tall and proud of my voting record.
It is interesting when you go to the primary polls at gemstatechronicle.com and you compare the candidates in each race, which of course you can do. You start to see a pattern that you're endorsed, at least the ones I have on the site so far, by the Idaho Freedom PAC, by the Republican Party District 9 Central Committee, Think Liberty Idaho PAC. Meanwhile, your opponent's endorsed by IACI, which is the Idaho Prosperity Fund, and I also have the professional firefighters up there, and I'm sure he's going to be endorsed by the food processors and such, big ag folks, and that seems to be a pattern. Those don't usually cross. There isn't usually a candidate that's endorsed by both the Idaho Freedom PAC and IACI. It's like the Venn diagram is completely separate, and it makes me wonder, what do you think about this? Why has there become such a divide between liberty loving conservatives and big business? Because just a few years ago, those two things were considered synonymous. You go back to the Reagan era or even the Bush era, the idea of conservatives would support business because we believe in free enterprise and capitalism as opposed to the heavy hand of government. And now it seems like there's this growing divide between business and conservative principles. IACI is endorsing some Democrats this cycle, so they're obviously looking out for their agenda. How did that happen? And what's the difference? Why is there such a divide there?
That's a really good question, and I guess the bottom line would have to be money. Um, Follow the money. I think that, like I said, I think a lot of these lobby groups and the votes that we make as legislators, they would financially benefit some of these lobby groups. Different legislation will, that's why we have to stand up on the floor and say that, oh, what's the word? When
So,
you have a conflict of interest,
Rule 80.
you get up and you declare Rule 80 because you have a conflict, because maybe you stand to benefit or your spouse stands to benefit for if this bill passes. So I think there's some ties there that you've got to go along with what big business wants so they can continue to make money. Um, and I hate to believe that that's what's happening here, but that's what it appears. And it appears to be, it's not only happening in Idaho, it's
Mhm.
happening across a lot of the states. This whole thing with um, the battle between conservative and establishment people. Um, I think looking no further than the launch program that Governor Little wanted, and um, funding education for specific jobs that will benefit specific industries. And a lot of these industries can afford to hire and train their own people. Why is the government asking the taxpayer to fund training for companies that
Mhm.
should be able to do it themselves. I mean, to me, seriously, that's a cross into uh, communistic type um, behavior uh, and a communist type of system where you've got a group of people. I believe they're appointed by the governor, and this group of people is going to determine which areas of the workforce they want to help students or help the funding of these students for their education into these certain workforces. Um, it's just it is not the proper role of government to do that. And it's not my job. It's not the government shouldn't be coming to me and asking me to pay for a student's education. I'm sorry, but it's no different than the Biden administration paying off someone's student loan. It's just kind of in reverse. You're giving it to them in advance instead of afterwards. And it's no different. So how do you explain that away? It's the same thing in reverse. And I am so not for that. And there might be vocations that we need more people in, but let's incentivize them financially, um, on our own as business owners instead of looking to the government. And there's just so much of that. I think that not every problem requires a government solution. Not every single problem requires a government solution. Why is it that if you have a problem that you need to go to the legislature and have them write a bill so that your problem is addressed? And it's a limited population of people, especially if that solution is going to cost the taxpayers more money. If a person has a problem and they go to the government and they get a new law made, and then they've got to have a line of appropriation, which is going to cost more money, which is, again, it's this big cycle of government expansion, government growth, and then it costs the taxpayers more money.
From a very large, historical perspective, um, I think it was really during the New Deal, Franklin Roosevelt figured out that you could essentially buy votes. You could create a constituency group, a patron group that got money from the government, and therefore that group, whether it's teachers or artists or workers in any industry, that group would then vote for you and your party to continue. And that's kind of what's happening here, isn't it? Because the legislature passed and the governor supported the launch grant. Well, all the companies that stand to benefit, of course, they want that. I guess they made a financial calculation that it's cheaper to, support some lobbyists and some PACs and give money to some politicians, and in exchange, they get taxpayer money to train their workers. But it's also going to turn those high school graduates who are going to use the program and become dependent on the program, they're going to support it too, and they're going to be voting as well. So the only people who are opposing it are the people who actually believe in, the proper role of government and fiscal conservatism, but that's going to be counterbalanced by the companies and employees and graduates who are benefiting from the program, and it's literally just a patronage system. How do you fight that without coming across as the bad guy?
It's $1 million question.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting.
Exactly.
I've been looking at I looked over here at your IACI score. Believe it or not, like you said, IACI does score bills and legislators. IFF is not the only group that does that. And some of the, okay, some of these, the launch grant, obviously they're going to support that because they have a direct interest in it. But some of them I'm confused about. There's one of them to, let's see, where was I? Equity and Financial Services, House Bill 669. It would make it so that companies couldn't impose a social credit score, or, credit card processors, banks couldn't do a social credit score to, keep track of what you're buying. IACI scored you low because you supported that. They opposed it. Same thing with prohibiting mask mandates. You had a bill, had a bill to prohibit cities and government agencies from imposing mask mandates. IACI opposed that. That's a little weird to me that they would be. It's like they're going outside of their you know their focus and taking on issues that are outside their purview, and then scoring you low because you support or oppose those. House Bill 498, protecting minors from harmful materials on the internet. That you sponsored that bill. They opposed it. It's it kind of boggles
It's
the mind.
pretty eye-opening if people go and actually take the time to look. Um,
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to do a deep dive on exactly what IACI supported or opposed. They have about, it looks like a couple dozen bills they followed. IFF, of course, they rate hundreds of bills and give you an analysis. They don't just tell you why, that they support or oppose it. They tell you why at least. Um, Speaking though of House Bill 493, uh, you this session took an interest in health freedom. There were two bills that I saw. There was that one prohibiting mask mandates, and the one to curtail the authority of health districts. Can you tell us about those? What happened to them, and what you might do in the future with those?
so the mask mandate, I believe this is probably what since 20. It probably started in 2020. I'm not sure if
Hmm.
I think it was Carrie Hanks that started it. Um, and it's been carried on ever since, to try to pass so that we never have to have that forced on us again. And it doesn't say that you can't, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. It's not saying that. It's just the no government entity can make you do it and tell you that you have to do it. And there has been so much proof now, and even in the beginning, I mean, even, Mr. Fauci himself, even before it started getting super crazy, he was saying it wasn't effective. And so, why would we try to force people to do something that is proven it's not even effective? It's not going to do anything. Um, People should just have the right to be able to choose what to do to make their own health decisions, with their own body. Let's make that clear, with their own body. Um, if you get my drift, wink, wink. Um, so, so that passed through committee. I was a little surprised it passed through committee, but it did. But Okay, I'll get to that later. So it passed through health and welfare. Wait, no, that was state affairs. That was state affairs. Not surprised it passed through state affairs. Um, got through state affairs. I brought it to the floor of the House. It passed, and then it went over to the Senate side and got stuck in Guthrie's drawer. State affairs
Senate
over on
State
the
Affairs.
Senate side wouldn't even get a hearing. And I think, I can't say this for sure. I don't know, but it kind of feels like sometimes, um, the more moderate part of the GOP, the Republican Party, might go ahead and just pass something because they know they're tied to uh, their friend that is the chair of state affairs on the other side. So they might all get together and say, "Yeah, we'll go ahead and pass it on the floor of the House because we know it's just going to get killed on the other side." I can't say that's for sure what's happening, but it seems like, I don't know. It seems possible.
I think it's very
Um,
plausible. And the reason I say that is because in 2022, House Bill 666 to remove the exemption for librarians and teachers for distributing harmful materials to minors, that passed the House floor overwhelmingly and then got stuck in Senate State Affairs, except back then it was Patty Ann Lodge's chairmanship. Uh, but then later on, when new library bills started coming out, a lot of the people who voted for 666, which is a very, very strict, harsh bill, they did not vote for the less strict bills, perhaps because they knew it would have a better chance of passing the Senate. So I think that definitely does happen.
yeah. Yeah, there's definitely, it's a lot, as I've learned. I'm not a politician. I am not a politician. I am a wife and a mom. And I did this, going into this, to stand up for freedom and liberty and protect people's rights, and less government, less spending, all that.
Mhm.
That's it. That's what I went in for. I'm a wife and a mom. I'm not a polished attorney or, uh, I'm just we the people. So learning this process, this whole process, and who you talk to, and um, there are definitely games that go on. There's definitely, and especially at the end of the session when so and so is holding this bill on the Senate side and they're holding this bill on the House side, and so wants their bill passed. So let's make a deal. We'll hear yours if you hear ours. And some people just, they love this game. They love the game. I am not one of those people. We have a process, and I'm kind of black and white, and I'm either yes or no. Um, I'm not gonna trade. I'm never gonna trade. I'm not gonna give up my core principles and values because this bill is my baby and I'm gonna get it passed no matter what I have to do. I'm not gonna sell my soul for a vote. I'm not gonna do it. Um, and I'm not going to gameplay. I do realize there you need to make relationships and you need to talk to people, but um, I'm not going to play games. So be it. Um, so the other bill was a simple removal from the code that the health districts had the right to do all things, and we took out all things and put in uh, they had the right to do things reasonable and necessary. So taking out all things and putting in reasonable and necessary. And that passed through, again, it passed through committee, and it passed through the House and got stuck on the Senate side.
Nice.
We did get one health bill through. Glenita and I brought a health freedom bill that was once a student. I mean, this was kind of the main goal of it was that if you have two seniors in high school and one of them turns 18 when they're a senior, well, they no longer get the vaccine exemption just because they turned 18. So we had legislation that would make it so that once you turn 18 and you're a student, you still get the vaccine exemption option. And then we carried it further so that it would include all students. And surprisingly, that one passed.
Hmm.
So thank goodness. Any student over the age of 18 um, at a public or private school will be able to get a vaccine exemption. So that was good.
Baby steps, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Going back to the mask mandate ban, it boggles the mind that, not only did people vote against it, but you had people debating against it and testifying against it, saying cities need the authority to force people to wear masks because you never know what might happen. It flies in the face of American, you know, values of, the government can only do the enumerated powers that we give them, and everything else is reserved to the people. And it's surprising me to even see self-proclaimed conservatives with that viewpoint.
Right. Yeah. And all the proof and everything that has come out, again, Fauci himself, that it's not going to work. I mean, what was the big thing? The germ is, you see a chain link
Yeah.
fence and the germ is so small, it's just going to go right through there. I mean, it's not going to do anything. If it makes you feel good to wear it, then wear it. But you shouldn't be forcing something on somebody's body that has proven not only does it not work for what they say it works for, but it can also harm people.
Mhm.
You're breathing in and the sores and different things for wearing it for so long, and especially children and the learning. And it's not okay. It's just not okay. And it's again, it's like a communistic, it has just such a control feel to it where we will tell you what to do and you will do it no matter what. It's just not okay. Yeah. And for people to, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I wanted to ask you about one other just kind of off the wall thing. You came from Oregon and you live right there, you know, I don't know, looking at the map, you could probably throw a rock across the river, right? It's pretty close. So, what do you think about the Greater Idaho movement? People over in Eastern Oregon, various counties have voted to start the process of having a conversation to maybe moving the border over toward the Cascade Mountains and bringing all those Eastern Oregon counties into Idaho. And I've heard all sorts of pro arguments and con arguments, but just what's your gut feeling on that?
I feel bad for those people. I really do. I really feel bad for them because I'm sure a majority of those people think like I think, very conservative values and principles. And I feel bad for them. And I'm okay with a conversation about it. Um, I don't know that it's ever going to happen because it's very complicated.
Mhm.
It would be very complicated. Um, and I definitely don't want to include, I mean, I don't want more, I don't want more moderate influence coming over here. And so yeah, I can't say one way or the other. But what I can say is we packed up our whole entire lives and moved somewhere where we didn't know anybody because we just couldn't take it anymore. So, fortunately, we were able to do that, both being retired and, having enough freedom and to cover the expenses and that sort of thing. To do that, we were able to do that. And I feel bad for the people that financially maybe aren't in a position where they're able to do that. Um, but that's kind of, it's kind of you got to vote with your feet kind of thing. And if you hate it bad enough, you're gonna do whatever you have to do to make it happen.
Hmm.
So I'm all for the conversation. I'm not saying I'm 100% for it. I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm definitely willing to sit at the table and hear the conversation about it.
Well, one way or another, I think the next few years, few decades are going to be interesting times for our country, and we should be working to prepare our state for it, for whatever can happen.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it would be nice to have more conservatives in
Yeah.
Idaho. It
Well,
would be helpful.
depends on what kind of conservatives, I guess, right? That's
Well,
that's the
yeah.
whole discussion now.
Yeah, because I know that there are people that think just because they're a Republican that makes them a conservative. And that is obviously not true. You look at people's voting records. I mean, really, that's all you have to do is look at how people vote, how our legislators are voting, and that oh, I don't have it right here handy, but there's the sheet that shows how your Republican legislators, well, how all your legislators vote, but we've broken that out even further, where it's just the Republicans, and you've got Republicans like my former senator that, I think they're wearing a blue bodysuit with a red cape on top. And
Funny image.
when she said she wasn't going to be running this time, I think the red cape kind of flew off, and it was just full on blue bodysuit. Um, and you see these people that they are voting philosophically like Democrats. I mean, Democrats want masks on your face. Democrats want you to get a jab that you don't want to take. Democrats want porn in libraries. These are Democrat thinking philosophies, not Republican. This is not, and it's not just um, Dorothy Moon and the Republican Party and these are also national Republican Party views that these people are voting against. It's
Mhm.
not just because the crazy Idaho uh, whatever you want to call them, the hyper conservatives, or I'm not even going to say the other words, but uh, it's not just those people. It's Republicans, period. Either you're a Republican or you're not. And
We've
I don't know.
I've
Word
seen
conservative is
yeah
hijacked.
I've seen a definite realignment of the parties. It used to be the Democrats were pro-war, and now most of the pro-war people are on, or excuse me, the Democrats were anti-war, and now most of the pro-war people have moved over to the Democrat side, and it's happening on a lot of issues, business and corporations, things like that, and yeah, it's happening here in Idaho as well. And the Republican Party here, I think, is going through an identity crisis, and we'll find out in the next few weeks where we fall on that.
Yeah. Yep.
So, uh, appreciate your time. Is there anything else, any final thoughts, or can you tell us where we can go to learn more about you and support you?
So I have Jacyn for Idaho, FOR, JacynForIdaho.com. That's my website. And you can go there and email me if you want signs or if you'd like to do a meet and greet, a local meet and greet, that would be good. I also have a Facebook page, Jacyn for Idaho. I'm on Twitter, but I don't do much on Twitter. Um, I am pretty easily accessible and really try to get back to everyone that tries to contact me. And I am your We the People candidate in this race.
Well, and you can go find all those links at the Gem State Chronicle under primary polls. Go find Jacyn Gallagher, House 9, Seat A, and they'll all be there. And Representative Gallagher, thank you for your time.